Good morning and welcome to Fountain Street Church. I am Reverend Christopher Rowe, and I have the honor of serving as the executive minister here at this temple of love and joy. And on behalf of everyone who calls this their spiritual home, welcome to worship this morning. This morning on this post-Thanksgiving Sunday, we enter the season of Advent on the first Sunday of Advent, the Sunday of Faith. We have a long tradition here at Fountain Street Church of observing Advent and finding joy and wonder and hope and faith and inspiration in its many mysteries. And so this morning, even though we are in COVID and even though we are spread out and even though our recording setup might not look a lot like the sanctuary, we still want to pull in those echoes of the past and lift up this sacred tradition. You'll hear more about that in a little bit. But note, we still have an Advent wreath and we still have the four beloved traditions. So, on behalf of everyone who calls this their home, let me welcome you. You who, no matter what you look like or who you love, or who you do or do not worship, or what you do or do not believe, or where you live, you, as you are, entirely who you are welcome to Fountain Street Church. Every week we begin the service by lighting the four candles. Candles of love and compassion and justice and community. But clearly, I didn't have enough room for all those candles this week. And so, we invite you this season of Advent to allow the light that will be kindled in the Advent wreath every week to be kindled in your hearts and to hold that space of community that burns within and among all of us, even though we are spread out. On behalf of everyone who calls this church their home, and on behalf of everyone who made this Sunday possible, welcome to worship. I'm so glad you're here today. Thank you.
As Reverend Christopher mentioned, we have entered a special holiday season, and so we've changed out our normal 4 candles for a special 4. That season is the season of Advent, and it is the 4 Sundays leading up to Christmas Eve. One of the ways that many people mark this season is through the tradition of the Advent wreath. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with this practice, I wanted to share a little bit about its history and how we got the Advent wreath. It actually doesn't come from the biblical story that also frames this season. It comes from a school teacher not so long ago. About 250 years ago, there was a German minister who also taught at a school. And like a lot of teachers, maybe got a little overwhelmed at the holiday season with all of the questions. Is it Christmas yet? Is it Christmas yet? Is it Christmas yet? It's a little bit like a holiday version of Are We There Yet from the back seat. If you have children or are a child yourself, you might be familiar with this intense anticipation of the holiday season. Anyway, this minister/teacher's patience was wearing a little thin. So he decided to come up with a different way of answering that question. Drawing on traditions that were familiar to him and in the surrounding culture, he created the first Advent wreath. Now, the very first Advent wreath was designed for a classroom setting, and so it had more than the 4 candles. It had the 4 big white candles for Sundays. And then it had 6 little red candles for the days in between. And every day when his classroom would fill up with students before they could get to the barrage of questions, they would light the candles, signaling the countdown of the arrival of that special day. This creative new tradition spilled out into local congregations in Germany, particularly Lutheran congregations. That's where we get down to just the 4 white pillars, because churches only gather on Sundays. And then the tradition continued to spread. Adaptations were made of different candle colors, themes were added, and more traditions developed. So now, many people in churches and in their homes all around the world use an Advent wreath as a way to mark their waiting, to light a flame for patience and the anticipation that they all feel during this season. I want to note that some of the decorations that are typical of Advent wreaths come from other traditions, particularly pagan traditions, that honor the solstice, the turning of the seasons, the cycle of the year, growing darkness, and the slow return of the light in the winter season. It was a traditional practice before the Christian practice of Advent to bring evergreen wreaths into homes as a reminder of the eternal cycle of the seasons, or to build a Yule log decorated with candles and greenery to bring light and life into a winter home. So I want to invite you into this tradition, a tradition that I grew up with and practice in my own home. I want to invite you into the season of waiting and anticipation, of hope for the embodiment of the divine made real in our world. Today we light the first candle, and it symbolizes faith. A complicated word for many in today's culture and in Fountain Street, but also a word that has lessons to share. So welcome to Advent. Welcome to Fountain Street Church. It's good to be together.
Faith will come at Christmas. Faith faith divine. He was born at Christmas time. Faith be yours and faith be mine. Hope will come at Christmas. For us, oh hope divine. He was born at Christmas time. Hope be yours and hope be mine. Love will come at Christmas. Love for us, oh love divine. He was born at Christmas time. Love be yours and love be mine. Joy will come at Christmas. Joy for us, oh joy divine. He was born at Christmas time. Joy be yours and joy be mine. Amen.
Good morning. I am a humanist, and I know that many of you are humanists, agnostics, atheists, and people simply exploring life and spirituality. I'm here to tell you that Faith Sunday at Fountain Street Church is for everyone, not just those who believe in God. Years ago, when the 4 Sundays of Advent used to roll around, faith, hope, love, and joy, I would just kind of sit this first one out. I came to work, but I left faith to the faithful. Over time, and probably with your influence, I came to realize that humanism, believing in the essential value of human beings, requires an element of faith. 2020 has made that painfully clear. After all the pain and struggle we've experienced this year, to believe with your whole heart that humanity has any essential goodness worth building upon, doesn't that seem like faith? There is a resilience, a steadfastness, a stubbornness even. There is a suspension of disbelief that it will be worth all the trouble. There is the way faith builds upon itself in community. And that one is my favorite, because faith in humanity is faith in something so tangible. You can reach out and touch it. You are it. You're part of it. You participate in it every day. Faith in humanity is deep faith in oneself while transcending selfishness. We empower each other. Faith in humanity is the faith of a teammate. It's playing to win, even when the odds look grim. This year has challenged my faith in humanity, but moreover, it's reminded me how important it is. Not to jump 2 Sundays ahead, but faith reminds me of love, or at least I'm learning how they work hand in hand. To me, faith, like love, is not an elusive feeling or a state of mind so much as a decision that I affirm daily with my actions. So, where do we suppose this decision, this faith in humanity, will lead us? World peace? Prosperity and happiness for everyone? I don't know. Sure. That's what heaven looks like for me. Anyway, I'll be here with you, and I know that many of you will be right here with me, and no one will be able to tell us we didn't try. So, on this first Sunday of Advent, I challenge you to live faithfully this season. Take heart in the resilience humanity is showing, and remember the negativity bias. Savor a relationship you might sometimes take for granted. Tell someone who is struggling that you believe in them. Dare to believe deeply in yourself. Thank you.
Advent Poem by Enuma Okuro. I want to find my place amongst the people of Advent, but I can't quite decide who I am. I want to be pregnant with God, but it takes such a toll on the body. I have given birth to things before, and labor is hard and untimely. I want to welcome angels and say yes to anything. But if I saw an angel, I would hold him hostage and send a ransom note of questions demanding answers to God. I want to cheer blessings from the sidelines with a belly growing with prophecies and have friends and strangers take hope. Because God has a season for those whose seasons have passed. I want to put my trust in dreams and in the words of the ones I love. To believe that God is as close as the one who would share my bed. But mostly, I want to break from being the one who mostly falls silent in the presence of all that's holy. Who loses her words in disbelief, terrified by claims of joy and gladness. Unable to believe that prayers are answered. As we enter this Advent season, we enter with the theme of faith. Later, in the month, we get to more fun topics like love and joy, but we get to start out with this complicated topic of faith. Faith is a funny and a fickle word, especially in a community such as Fountain Street, with different theologies mixing and mingling in our currently metaphorical pews. Faith comes with more questions than it does answers. There is this tendency in liberal religion to throw out the word, out the window alongside creed and dogma. But that's the funny thing about faith. As cliche as it might sound, faith is not the absence of doubt. Faith is not the absence of questions. Faith is a willingness to wrestle with that which is raw in our world, in the stubborn hope that answers might emerge. I'm ever so grateful for Conor, who was willing to share with us earlier about his own journey with this word faith, especially in this season and at this place of Fountain Street. He mentions leaving faith to the faithful. In that time, he carried a definition of faith that was loaded with one kind of theology, loaded with particular historical baggage. But just last week, I invited you to set down the weight of grief and doubt at our collective table. So this week, I want to invite you to set down your wounds, your assumptions, your baggage about this little 5-letter word, faith, even just for a little bit, and explore with me what it could mean, what it might mean, must mean, I believe, for this community and for our future. In a community such as Fountain Street, or in the tradition that I come from of Unitarian Universalism, many feel that the word faith is reserved for those who have theistic theologies, that it is reserved for people who believe in one or more gods or goddesses. But do you know how Merriam-Webster defines faith? If you open a Merriam-Webster dictionary or look it up online, sure, one of its definitions is a belief and trust and loyalty to God, with a capital G. But they actually list that as the second definition. Its first definition is, quote, allegiance to duty or a person, fealty to one's promises, sincerity of intentions. So, In what do you place your faith? Or to rephrase the question, where does your allegiance lie? Where do you have the highest sincerity and your deepest intentions? Hold that framing for a minute as we revisit the Christmas story. In the biblical story of the coming of the Christ child to earth, this Faith Sunday that we are at today is the farthest day from that blessed arrival. The Christmas star has barely begun to rise on the horizon, barely a glimmer of the glory to come. On Faith Sunday, the prophecies are still just whispers and rumors. There are no angels on rooftops with trumpets just yet. Faith Sunday arrives when two refugee parents, Mary and Joseph, are running from the cruel intentions of a dictator. They are even yet to seek shelter from neighbors and find none. Faith Sunday arrives as a dictator spreads death and destruction, hoping to snuff out truth, or what he calls deception. Faith Sunday arrives when there is little to no reason to hope. And yet, that is the call. That is the action. That is what is lived out in the bleak beginnings of the Christmas story. What about your Christmas story this year? What about the story of 2020 and beyond? A line from the Advent poem shared earlier echoes in my head. But if I saw an angel, I would hold him hostage and send a ransom note of questions demanding answers to God. I can't count the number of times in the last year, years plural really, that I have wanted to grab an angel by the shoulders, shake them and send them flying back to God for answers. It would have felt good. That I wanted to put my trust in dreams, in the words of those I love, and to believe that God is as close as the one who would share my bed. Yet I was terrified by claims of joy and gladness and unable to believe that prayers are answered. I still might be terrified and unable to believe. And that, my friends, that right there is where faith comes in. Because faith isn't designed for the end of the story. When the baby has been safely born, when the womb is healed, when the family has gathered to celebrate, when new life has been brought into the world and new day has dawned, faith is no longer needed. Faith isn't for when we are basking in the sun. Faith is made for when the shadows creep too close, when the doubt grows too big, and when pain weighs too heavy. That is when we turn to faith. That is when we lean on faith. That is when we dig deep and reach out and find comfort in faith. I hope that you find comfort in your faith community, right here. I know that there are some here today who wouldn't claim Fountain Street as a faith community or a religious community, but I do, wholeheartedly. Because like Conor led us to earlier, I have faith in the power of this community. I have faith in all of you coming together to bring each other comfort in times of pain, to bring light to the shadows of our world, to the shadows of our own hearts. I choose to put my trust in you. My allegiance is with you. And I hope that together, our highest sincerity and our deepest intentions might build a faith community that brings comfort, light, love, faith, peace, and justice far and near. But my friends, that will take work. It will take work to dig deep and to reach out. Faith and the comfort it brings do not magically appear on our laps. Faith communities do not manifest overnight, nor are they sustained by indifference. Building faith communities takes hard work. And I believe that that is the call to us this Advent season on Faith Sunday. I turn again to our poem from earlier. I want to be pregnant with God, but it takes such a toll on the body. Labor is hard and untimely. I can tell you that statement is true. Labor is hard and untimely. Whether we are birthing babies or birthing flourishing communities, it will be hard and untimely labor. It will require your faith in word and in action. Faith communities, like faith itself, are not built for easy times. We should be grateful that they are here to hold us in our celebrations, to join us in our gladness and our joy. But we need each other most. We need our faith communities most when we need a break to break our patterns of falling silence in the presence of all that is holy. When we are terrified by claims of joy and gladness and unable to believe that prayers are answers. We need each other to come around and make our prayers manifest. We need each other to come around and remind us that joy and gladness are present in the pain. We need faith that we will show up for each other. We need faith that the story goes on. So on this first Sunday of Advent, I am choosing, as Conor said, to have resilient, steadfast, and stubborn faith in you and in this community that we can build together. You can reach out, you can touch it, because you are a part of it, and you are a part of changing it every day. So what kind of faith, what kind of community will we build? I have faith that it will be full of love and joy and faith in all the themes of Advent and more. May we be full of anticipation in this season of Advent for the birthing of our faith.
We have a tradition here at Fountain Street Church of designating the weekly offerings during Advent. While 50% of it stays here to continue to support our own internal ministries, 50% is designated to a specific cause or organization. For this first Sunday of Advent, for this Sunday of faith, we are designated the funds to Black Lives Matter. That means that while 50% of your contributions and your generosity will stay here and support our vital ministries, 50% of it will be given directly to the Black Lives Matter organization. We thank you for your generosity as you consider that. You can give through Venmo or text to give or sending an old-fashioned check or cash, though I would not advise mailing cash. But what matters most is you see your act of generosity as an act of faith, that you have the power to contribute to something bigger than yourselves. On behalf of all of us who weekly make this appeal, thank you for your consideration and for your generosity.
Before we close today, I'd like to invite you into one more Advent tradition. A tradition that is an invitation to bring the connection we've tried to foster on Sunday mornings and Wednesday night in our services into the rest of your week, into the everyday of being. And that is an Advent calendar. The most popular form of an Advent calendar is probably the children's chocolate calendar, where each day you pop a piece of chocolate out of a cardboard calendar decorated with holiday cheer. I grew up in a congregation that distributed an Advent calendar devotional, so all the families could gather in the evening and reflect on the same passage. But this year at Fountain Street, I'd like to introduce our Advent Connection calendar. The full version went out in the Friday Flash and is posted on our Facebook and Instagram. Each day has a suggested activity that can be done alone, with your household, or with other Fountain Streeters virtually. Every day through Christmas Eve, I will be posting a more in-depth invitation, suggestions, instructions for that day's activity on our social media platforms. If you don't use social media, don't worry. Those will also go out in the Friday Flash and the Wednesday 5 and 5, so keep an eye out. We'd love to see how these practices and activities are going for you and yours. So feel free to comment on our posts or send us an email with pictures and stories. Let this Advent calendar, let this season of Advent in general, be a reminder that while we are in a season of waiting, that's what Advent means, literally waiting. Waiting to be together, waiting for the next chapter to begin, waiting for our reunion. That doesn't mean that we need to be passive or apathetic. Instead, let us take advantage of this season of reflection to intentionally reconnect with ourselves, our loved ones, and our community, so that when we arrive at that blessed day of reunion, our faith is stronger and our community is stronger. Happy Advent. Thank you for being with us. Blessed be.